I'm Bradford Ferguson. We're here with Tesla boomer mama, Alexandra Merz. And one question I get from a lot of people is why is Elon so active politically? We are going to talk a lot about that, the intersection between Elon Musk and his companies and politics and the whys of that. But I do want to fully introduce Tesla Boomer Mama, who is an awesome advocate for us Tesla shareholders, being a leader and really helping people get their votes done, especially people in Europe and across the world where their banks didn't really support the votes. You were an awesome leader in that and tremendous effort involved. You're the principal at LNF Investor Services, and you help entrepreneurs immigrate to the United States of America. And
Yeah.
you recently became a citizen yourself, and you'll be voting in the election for the first time. Maybe we can go back to the beginning of things with Musk and this administration and why he's gotten politically active. Some of this is opinion, us connecting the dots. We can't necessarily prove it all, but let's talk first about the EV summit and Biden not even wanting to say the word Tesla for like a year and a half or however long it was.
It was crazy, wasn't it? So, just for those who are maybe a little bit less familiar with Elon and his tweets, he has always maintained that he has always voted Democrat since he became a citizen in 2002. So, he voted for Obama, he voted for Hillary, he voted for Biden. And that must have come as quite a surprise when so Biden started in January 21, and in August 21, Elon was not invited to that EV summit. We also have these wonderful words of Biden, at the GM plant where he declared that Mary Barra was the leader, that she led the EV revolution. It's actually funny because we spoke with Rohan Patel a couple of days ago on a space on Twitter, and no, actually it was a video as well, and he. Remember, he was very involved with the Obama administration, working in the White House then, and obviously knows all this, very familiar with all this crowd. And he said it was unbelievable for him too. The first thing he did is he texted the speechwriter, who immediately said, "I didn't write that. That was not in the speech. That was not on the prompter," right? So I found that was an interesting detail. But I mean, 21 was complicated already. And you're right, President Biden and his administration didn't mention the name. Actually, it's surprising because Pete Buttigieg, who is in charge of transportation, drives Teslas, knows Teslas very well, had a really good relationship with Elon before. So you felt, or at least I felt, that the union influence that always has been a huge influence for President Biden just had won this whole game in 21 and 22. There was, Tesla was to be ignored. And then it became much bigger.
Tesla sold more EVs in the US than everyone else combined. So,
Yes.
like, for them not to be invited to the
Yeah.
EV summit, was a
Ridiculous.
show of favoritism. I don't think Tesla gives much money in lobbying. And I think that's maybe one reason why, but go ahead and proceed.
Well, I think those were, in the view of the current administration, little sins compared to the big sin that happened, which was Elon purchasing Twitter in October 22, so exactly 2 years ago. I think that was the nail in the coffin. And so that was in October 22. And immediately after that, and I mean, the one thing you cannot blame President Biden for is that he's reactive and quick and outspoken. You usually don't get any sound bites. So what was more surprising was that in November 22, so just 1 month after purchasing Twitter, President Biden called out for federal investigations into Elon, presumably having contacts with foreign actors, which actually makes me laugh because we hear this again now, a couple of days prior to the elections. Now, if for 2 years the federal agencies have investigated, obviously they haven't found anything, because they would have arrested him if there was anything, or that would have leaked the second they found something. So obviously they found nothing, and they're now trying to blow up that story a second time. But anyway, so that was his call to all federal agencies to just, he was persona non grata, and he was going to be investigated in as many possible ways as possible. And I mean, if you know what many call the deep state, these signals, of a president signaling clearly in a press conference with a sentence like that just gives loads and loads and loads of bureaucrats and elected people the clear go ahead to do this now. So this was really a major signal. And then since then, it
And
just
the statement
escalated.
was,
Department of Justice. Go ahead.
yeah, the statement was Elon Musk should be looked into.
Exactly.
Very close to that.
Exactly. And so that was November 22. And then it came from all sides. So there were a couple of things already brewing then, notably the Democratic senators from Connecticut and Massachusetts. So the Connecticut is Blumenthal, Massachusetts is Markey. Markey did a lot of work with Blumenthal, and then obviously Senator Warren. So these three, they threw the ball to each other to continuously do things, bring them always to the press, make sure everybody knows about it, because there's investigation, and the way they do it, they're actually much more on the public front. Nothing ever seems to happen in the back rooms, but they always publicize it a lot. So the Blumenthal market team, they called for investigations and recalls of Teslas. And they did so 7 times between April 21 and December 23. That's when I stopped counting. So I don't know whether they did any more in 2024. And then we had Senator Warren. So remember November 22, the call for action from President Biden. Well, in December, just a month afterwards, she started sending letters to the Tesla board where she complained that the Twitter purchase was actually harming Tesla shareholders. And I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. The funny thing about that letter is actually that if you go into the PDF, it was written by Blumenthal. It was not even written by her. So that just shows you how coordinated this all is, right? How they are really conspiring to make this all happen, and who is pulling the strings. It really makes me sad. She also wrote a letter to the SEC chair Gensler that they should investigate the whole situation. I mean, they are clearly pushing. And at the same time, you have more seriously the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice went after Tesla, also went after SpaceX with the most ridiculous claim that SpaceX, who obviously is a very secretive company who has a lot of information that is confidential and highly protected, should employ refugees. While in fact, they cannot employ refugees. So there are actually 2 contradicting laws, which happens ever so often with all these laws. And so this is still ongoing, but I mean, it's just complete, utter nonsense.
Yeah, they have to protect their rocket technology for one. It's called ITAR, ITAR. And basically we're saying that they needed to at least hire some asylum seekers, and you can't let those secrets get into other nation states' hands.
I mean, isn't that also so crazy with now most recent news where President Biden is very concerned that Elon, maybe in the mid-90s, between his student status, his G visa status, and his H-1B status, may have been legal in the United States, but not allowed to work. But at the same time, his agency is pushing refugees who just arrived in the United States to be hired by SpaceX, right? I mean, nothing can be more contradictory, but there you go. That's the way it goes. Then we had, the FTC. So the FTC actively harassed Twitter. And what's really interesting is the House of Representatives Congress did an investigation on that. And we have, I think it was in March 23, a committee which published 113 pages report on this, only how they harassed Twitter and how, because of Elon. Not a day before Elon purchased it, but the second Elon purchased it. So that was a whole investigation, and clearly marked, which also intensified in fall 22. So it just, and that's actually then when the House of Representatives stepped in and said, we want the investigation into it. The investigation was just devastating, and then it stopped. But it's not only the public side, it's really also the bureaucratic side. That's what I'm trying to say.
So they harass by requesting for reams of information, like give us all your data.
Yeah.
And then they ask Twitter to slice and dice that data in various ways for them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then you also have the SEC, who now, so obviously the SEC was pushed notably by Senator Warren / Blumenthal Markey, to look into whether Tesla shareholders were in any way affected negatively by the Twitter purchase of Elon. Obviously, the SEC can't do much about Twitter itself because it's not a publicly traded company. They can't do much about SpaceX because it's not a publicly traded company. So they had to concentrate on Tesla and the negative impact on Tesla. But that clearly wasn't good enough for the SEC. So the SEC said, okay, let's investigate Twitter, which is crazy because they're actually not even supposed to investigate Twitter. That's not how it works. But here we go, let's investigate Twitter. So when I wrote my article about all this, was about spring in 24, that was, off the cuff after the Toretta case. And I think we should talk about the Toretta case because I think that is part of this whole harassment as well. And we're paying dearly for it, and we may actually pay in billions for it, but we'll get there in a second. Since then, the California Coast Guard, who is in charge of preserving our beautiful coastline, I'm living 100 yards from it, so I can tell you how beautiful it is, had a commission where they arbitrarily and openly said that they don't like political stance and tweets of Elon, so SpaceX will not get permission to launch more rockets than the one that have already been approved. So there's a certain quota. They wanted to increase that quota, and that was refused. And they openly said it. I mean, it's not even that not that I'm surprised about anything in California anymore, but obviously they feel so strong about this, so empowered by the White House and the whole administration doing this now for 2 years that they don't even mind talking openly about it. And there have been more little things happening, like Starlink, which should have been deployed in rural areas in the United States, who is the perfect solution for internet rather than running cables. Well, that contract got pulled without major explanation for nothing. So many other things happened in 2024. But I think the main and clear issue in 2024 was that Tornetta case. So just to recall to those who are not familiar, up to the middle of June, Tesla was a Delaware company. Now we're a Texas company. That's not completely over yet as a fight, but at least, in broad lines, that's what we are. While we were a Delaware company, cases had to be brought to the Chancery Court of Delaware, which is the biggest business court in the United States. So you would think that the judges there, the 7 judges, they know what they're doing because that's what their business is, right? Making sure that, big companies have their fair shake. And actually, Delaware was well known for being rather business friendly. Well, that changed. So Tornetta was a completely crazy case about the pay package voted for by 73% of shareholders in 2018 for Elon, that had very steep payouts if these very steep goals were achieved, were too high for Tornetta's opinion. What happened is, obviously, the case was lying around for a long, long time, like it always does in judiciary. And by the time it was finally getting close to a verdict, 2023-24, Elon obviously had all these milestones achieved, and the provision for the options payout were accounted for in Tesla's books. And there in January 2024, the judge in charge, Judge McCormick, decided that the richest man doesn't need more money. And that was actually her opening line. She justified that.
It seemed that in her ruling and her accompanying letter with it, she made it personal about herself, making history, setting precedent, and it seemed more anti-billionaire than about the law protecting minority shareholders.
Yeah, it certainly was. So that was January, and how it works in the Chancery Court is she gives this preliminary judgment, still only preliminary, but usually the only point still open is how much attorney fees will be allocated to the winning party. Tens of millions, or we're talking about billions. They're asking for more or less 7 billions, and with the stock price going up, it could even be more now. I haven't done the calculation recently. It was 29 million shares, 29,400,000 shares. So that was the request of the attorneys, and then there were multiple hearings. Now, what we did is, and I agree, I've played a role in this, and I'm very proud I was able to help, is we mobilized a lot of shareholders, making sure the judge knows and the press knows and the board of directors of Tesla knows that us shareholders, we're not agreeing with this. It's not because one minor shareholders with, I think, how many shares was it, 9 shares or whatever, can obviously have been split since, so it would be 135 shares now, but that one shareholder can just impose with a politically motivated judge this judgment on us all shareholders. So anyway, long story short, we re-voted on exactly the same point in June, and we won that vote with 72%. And you're right, I played a role because it was really important that all retail shareholders got out and vote. Lots of Europeans and overseas shareholders couldn't vote, so we made sure we put enough pressure on the banks to finally make it possible. And we will have to do that again because there will be other votes that will be as contentious as this one. Tesla's lawyers tried to explain to the judge that she should have to reconsider her January preliminary judgment, given that there is now a second vote. So we're, as of now, waiting for 2 decisions from the same judge. The one is whether she will reconsider her January pros, and the second is how much she will allocate to the winning attorneys. It can come out any day, but I'm not surprised it's not out yet because I think she's waiting for the elections. Why do I think that? Because I think this whole story was politically motivated. I think her role, her appointment, the fact that she gathered all these, she's obviously the chair of the Chancery Court, that she gathered all these cases in her portfolio rather than letting any of her vice chancellors deal with it, shows a real motivation. And I think she wants to see how this all turns out. There's also a crucial senator vote and governor vote in Delaware in next week. So I think there are a couple of things happening in Delaware because Delaware is very unhappy about her. She has also ruled in other cases, again, I don't want to get too much into details, but where she's also very business unfriendly, and came to the point that Delaware Senate put in place a new law overruling her last judgment. They weren't even going to let people appeal and hope that the Delaware Supreme Court would change it. They were saying we're taking it in our own hands, and it overwhelmingly won. So there is some political tension. The Delaware Senate is currently a majority of Democrats, and even though it overruled it. So I think there is quite a lot of things happening behind the scenes there as well, which are not only legal, but which are also political. And that could have an influence. My personal feeling is we're going to lose on the change of the January statement. I think she's not going to reconsider that, but we may see relatively reasonable attorney fees. But I think even if there are attorney fees, Elon is going to appeal. I think he's in it to win this, and this may not only go to the Delaware Supreme Court, this may actually go to the federal Supreme Court. That is also another reason why I'm sure he wants to make sure that he is prepared in the best possible way and putting Tesla in the best possible position with President Trump presidency.
Yeah, and the reason why, before we talked about the Delaware case, Alexandra was talking about all the different federal agencies is while the House of Representatives does set some of the rules that the agencies follow, the president has broad powers on the tone of the agencies and how much money they have. The president agrees to the budget, which goes to the money on the agencies. The president can get rid of federal appointees at the agencies, etc. So a lot of this tone is set by the president. And with the statements that Biden made saying, we need to look into Elon Musk. As far as whether Musk is an asset to the United States or to China or to others, I believe that Musk is an asset to the whole world and that governments need to allow Musk to do good for us. Like the Coastal Commission of California, by limiting launches, they're actually increasing the cost per launch on everyone else. And that just makes it worse. So it seems unfair. Another item was SpaceX, where they have the water deluge system. So the Super Heavy is a really big rocket, ginormous. And then on top of that, it has the Starship. And the goal is to make the second stage, the Starship, reusable. And this would further drop the cost of delivering mass to orbit versus where now only SpaceX recovers the first stage, and they're the only ones. They said that this water that's used to assist with the launch, the federal government called it toxic wastewater. And what it is it's basically drinking water.
Yeah.
Allegedly, it's potable or drinkable. And like maybe technically it can be toxic because there's these organisms that they live like between the ocean and the river. And like how much salt is in there matters to these organisms, but they're in a precarious position anyways, those creatures that live on the edge of the brackish waters. But to call it toxic wastewater just was a giveaway to me that they're being overly political about it. And what also set Elon off was, and I feel like he got more into it after this whole Starship thing,
Yeah. He's
where
very passionate about Starship, and he's right to
yeah,
be very passionate about Starship.
they wanted to delay Starship for 2 months just because they
Yeah.
were just slightly increasing the
FAA.
scope of the launch. And the pace of innovation that Elon and his companies have can be limited by bureaucracies with permitting of lithium and with mining and refining and et cetera. That permitting process can really slow down the pace of innovation, which ends up benefiting all of us as consumers. The innovation does.
Yeah. And I just want to add something because obviously both candidate President Trump and Elon have talked about the fact that he would like to play a role in the future government to increase government efficiency, Dodge, Department of Government Efficiency. There's so much to be done, right? Deregulations, but also efficiency. But now think about all these agencies we've just discussed, right? Who the last 2.5 years were in marching order investigating Elon. Now suddenly we're 10 days ahead or 8 days ahead of the elections. At the moment, it looks very favorable to President Trump. Now suddenly thinking about the possibility that this may become reality and that their jobs may become redundant, or their way of working slowly may be put under challenge. So these people are currently sweating,
In
I
full
think.
desperation mode.
Exactly. I don't want to go all the way there. For them, this must be really a very difficult pill to see these early voting results. And again, it could completely change. I mean, I've seen so much in America that I'm not surprised if anything happens in the next 8 to 10 days. If this materializes, Elon is not a tender person. You've heard him for 2 or 3 years. When he does cuts for Tesla, it's always brutal. There are real people losing their jobs, real families suddenly not having the income, the health insurance, the whole system they were used to. But, and I mean, you've seen what happened in Q2 this year with 583 million of exceptional charges due to having to pay all these layoffs. But then you see
Mm-hmm.
how Q3 improved. I mean, there is a reason for that. And sometimes it's very painful to get to the better situation, but you still have to do it. And he's done it over and over again. Twitter has lost 80% of its workforce. It's still working, and it will end up finally
Yeah.
being profitable. So the never underestimate Elon, never bet against Elon. And those that were publicly and openly maneuvering against him, better watch out.
Yeah. So if you have all these investigations, all these attempted actions against your companies and even your person, you're going to fight back. You're
And that's the
like,
moment.
do
So
people
okay.
expect Elon to just lay down and take it? Like,
Of
if
course
that
not.
was you, like, you wouldn't just
Yeah.
let it happen. So this is why Elon is has been activated more politically. He's always been very outspoken on Twitter and now X. And I think one of the main reasons why they don't like Elon is the purchase of X, and X really slowed down on its censorship. I think one of the triggering things for Elon to buy Twitter at the time was them stripping Donald Trump of his Twitter account. And
Yes.
for them to do that to a sitting president, I think send a message to Elon that he could lose his own Twitter and his own speech. And Twitter, or X now, is a great place for Elon to get his message out and to connect with people.
It really is, for me, one of the most truthful platforms. I mean, you obviously never have 100% truth, but it allows everybody and anybody to speak up. It actually remunerates those that speak up a lot, which I think is a very clever idea of getting people loyal to the platform and publishing there. It should actually allow journalists, if they do a good job, to earn much more money on X by publishing their research on X than by publishing it on any of their traditional media, which would bring us closer to the truth as well. So I think he did a real service to humanity when he did it 2 years ago. It opened so much, and I think we would today not be in the same situation. I think this election would not be where it is now without the purchase of X.
Mm-hmm. And they don't like that.
Oh no, no, because it was. I mean, and that's why they are trying to fight back, right?
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about something a bit controversial. Elon's a legal immigrant. He was here legally. He had some kind of status change in the 90s. But what I've found in my life, I know several legal immigrants, and that it seems like legal immigrants are the most opposed to illegal immigration. Like they're the most fired up about it. Alexandra, you're a legal immigrant. Could you tell us a little more about this?
Sure. So I came here in 2014 on an E2 investor visa, investing in the company, my consulting company that I'm still running. And then 5 years afterwards, I applied for an EB1 green card, which is for extraordinary abilities. I did that on my whole career. I was always very outspoken, so I had a lot of TV appearances and a lot of press with my name in it. When I worked for a rating agency, I developed methodology. This methodology still carries my name. And so those were all the reasons that gave me my green card in 2018, which took a year to get 2019. I remember very well. It was on June 19, 2019. When I got that green card, I told myself, if possible, 5 years afterwards, I'll go to citizenship. But the problem was, at Germany, I'm German national, you can't have double citizenship. Two things happened at the same time. In those 5 years, once I had the green card, I really felt my roots were in America. It was a real shift in sentiment to not be on a non-immigrant visa anymore, but on a green card. So my decision was made that I would give up my German nationality to get the American one. And then Germany changed the law. They changed the law in May 24, and my 5 years were up in June 24. So when I had my oath in July 24th, so that's soon 4 months ago, I was able to actually keep both citizenships. So I'm a US citizen since July 2nd, 2024. Very proud, very, very outspoken about it. It was, I mean, I have 5 children. Those were obviously beautiful days when they were born, but this is certainly the top 10 of my days that are milestones. And obviously the sole reason, other than passport, for becoming a citizen was being able to vote. For the last 10 years, I have watched America. I still think this is the best country in the world. I love so much about it, but there's also so much that needs to change. You know, by voting, that we have that opportunity. It's beautiful to be in a democracy where you can just vote and have your say in a relatively easy manner. So why is immigration such a topic to me, to the point that it became actually my day job? Legal immigration is, especially for entrepreneurs, because that's the angle I have, is a heck of a job. It costs a lot of money to my clients to get their visas. It's very cumbersome to convince USCIS to give you your visa or your green card. Immigration involves 3 actors: the USCIS Immigration Office, it's obviously the border, and it's also the State Department by the embassies, because that's where people usually pick up their first visas. So you have to deal with 3 administrations. It's a headache for anybody who tries to do that, for anybody professional who works in this field. It's just a lot. And then you have so many people that just cross the border. And that is it's just unbelievable how this subject evolved. I sent you a chart, and I hope you're gonna show it at this moment, because it just shows how different presidents act on this topic in a different manner. Now, I'm not saying that President Trump in his first term was perfect, by far not. But he clearly cut the illegal immigration to, or what we call illegal immigration, the border crossing without prior authorization. Let's call it like that, because you're not even allowed to say illegal immigration anymore. He cut that to a bare minimum. And the last 4 years have been the contrary. I mean, there are numbers circulating between 6 and 10 and even 20 million border crossings. Let's stick with 6 for the moment, because that's already horrendous enough. So what these people do is they demand asylum. There's a possibility to demand asylum actually overseas, meaning you're still in your home country. You go to the US Embassy, you explain your case, and then you get approved or not approved. But they know darn well that that is taking a huge risk and don't want to do that. So they walk, often at their own peril, at a lot of cost. I mean, this is a whole business where coyotes are trying to make a buck of these poor people. I'm compassionate about the people. I just think the way the system is exploited is completely wrong. So they cross the border, and then there are immigration lawyers specialized in that who give them exact instructions how to now play the system and ask for asylum. Then the asylum courts are completely overwhelmed. Often takes 2 to 3 years. They disappear into nowhere and then live their life in the United States. Not a wonderful life, but a better life than they obviously have coming from Nicaragua or wherever. Apparently 6.5% of the population of Nicaragua now came in like this into the United States. 6.5% of a country. This is just
in the Biden administration alone, right?
Yes, in the last 3 years. So this is just, mind-boggling. And there are solutions. And obviously the one solution is that you don't let people come in. You ask these people to go to the US Embassy in their home country, pledge their cause, explain why they need asylum. Because not everybody can just say, I want asylum. I mean, that would be too easy. Can you imagine French people saying, oh, I don't like it in France anymore, I would like asylum? That's not how it works. You need a reason why you need asylum. There may be personal reasons, there may be political reasons. There are a lot of reasons. But just being able to walk over the border is not a reason. It is an issue. And it's so contrarian, because the US needs workers, lower level workers, right? That what's fundamentally wrong is the last 30 years, the last change in immigration law that really happened was under the Clinton administration. So for 30 years, nothing happened. And I'm convinced, looking at this now for 10 years, that both parties have an interest to do nothing. For the Democrats, this is a wonderful subject where they have an immigrant population that they think will become mainly Democrat voters. And that's actually proven. That is proven for the less educated immigrants that are coming to the United States. And many of the asylum seekers and refugee seekers are in that category. For the Republicans, it's a subject that, we're going to change, we're going to be tougher, and they never do anything. Look at the Bush administrations. This subject is an easy talking point, yet nobody does anything. And when you speak to them, because I've been in Washington, I've actually worked on E2 improvements and a couple of other stuff. So when you talk to them individually, they all agree that everything has to change. This is wrong. Anybody I spoke to, be either side, always agreed to, yes, we need to do something, and never anything happens. Now, obviously, the 2-year rhythm, because these immigration topics usually are started in the House. And by the House changing every 2 years, most initiatives just die out of time. Right? Somebody would have a good initiative, and then the 2-year cycle runs out, and then there's a new cycle, and maybe they're back, maybe they're not back, but you have to start it all over. So it's what it really would need is a president top down saying we're going to change the whole immigration system. And President Trump actually had a brilliant proposal in 2017 where he said we're going to change it, because I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but I could talk for days about immigration and what's wrong about it. But every year the United States give out 1.4 million green cards. Okay, that's the quota set in the middle of the 90s. Of those 1.4 million, 90% are family green cards, meaning marriages, parents, children, 90%. So of 1.4 million, 1.26 million are for families, and only 140,000 are for merit or employment based. Okay, only
Mm-hmm.
140,000 for a nation of 330 million. This is ridiculous. So the first thing that I would do, and who am I, is if you want to have parity, well, leave the 1.26 million family green cards, but also put 1.26 million merit-based green cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to take anything away, but just increase that number. And then
Yeah.
once you have that, you allocate those green cards to what you need. Do you need unskilled workers? Do you need skilled workers? Do you need extraordinary people? Do you need investors? That's how you do it. But with a number of 140,000, it is so tiny. It is so small for merit-based and employment-based that,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't believe that. I don't believe they ever thought this through.
So I need a bit of a quick answer because we need to wrap at the top of the hour.
Sorry.
That was really good. So you're somewhat of an immigration lawyer. That's
I'm not
kind
a
of like
lawyer.
the class I
Yeah,
would kind of put you
I'm
in.
using lawyers, but I'm not a
Uh,
lawyer.
and what I hear is that immigration lawyers really don't want it fixed in some ways to make it more simple. What do you think if it was just more simple and streamlined instead of like three bureaucracies, you're dealing with
Oh,
one? And
I would be very happy to close my shop if immigration law became easier, I can tell you, but I must be the only one in that case because you are right. This feeds a lot of immigration lawyers.
well, I love the work that you do. I think it's awesome. I'd love to hear more stories, but I'm guessing it's like confidential with your clients. But I'm also very happy that you're in the United States and not in Germany and part of the whole Tesla community.
Thank you.
And LNF Investor Services help entrepreneurs immigrate to the United States. How did they find you online, and what makes an ideal client for you, Alexandra?
So my typical clients are entrepreneurs already in overseas, in Europe, in Israel, in Bangladesh, in Brazil, whatever, or they have a solid academic path, have clearly studied to a bachelor's level or even an MBA level, and then a very good linear career. With all these people, we
Mhm.
can work, and our success rate is over 99%. We're really good. People can join me on X, obviously on Tesla Boomer Mama, but also by email. In my Twitter, in my X profile is my email address. I don't mind at all people emailing me. And they can obviously go on our website, landf.us, and they find with my name, they just put my name into Google. Usually my company shows up as the first link.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us, talking
Thanks
about
for having
that,
me.
and would like to talk with you again soon about GLP-1 drugs. And
Yes, 74. Look at that, 74 pounds.
both you and I have had great success with those. So look out for that in the near future. And with that, I'll say bye for now.
Bye-bye.